You know the analogy we got at the end of this episode with the scorpion requesting the frog to take him on his back across the river? This wasn't my first time hearing this analogy. In fact, I heard this analogy from a show that honestly I didn't think I would be reminded of while watching Megalobox. That show is Robot Chicken. Now, most likely some of you could be aware of Robot Chicken, some of you might not, but just I was reminded of Robot Chicken because it had the exact same analogy, a little bit more brutal, obviously, but I mean, the analogy is still the same, and I'm just really shocked about how it was done with this episode when it started talking about the scorpion and the frog and all that, and how the scorpion, it's just in its nature to sting and strike something, regardless if it has good intentions or not. And I thought that was really cool, by the way, just reminding me of that. It made me feel very nostalgic. It made me feel kind of like a young kid again. Nambu, he basically has been put in a spot, and so has Joe, so has Sachio. They are in a spot to where if they do not throw the match, then they all are going to die. Now, Sachio manages to get saved in this episode. For instance, Shirato, Yuki takes in Sachio to watch over him, and so the Mafia, regardless of how powerful they are, they're not going to want to compete and fight up against, Shirato. So, it's very apparent that, Sachio is safe for the time being, unless he leaves the area and they're very determined and hell-bent on taking him down. So, Sachio, he's going to be fine. Joe and Nambu is an entirely different story, because number one, Joe, he's out in the open, he's a public figure, he is someone that, honestly, Shirato doesn't really want to protect, and, I mean, it just takes a quick, easy step just to end the man. Nambu, it makes sense for him to be ended as well. So those two, they're still on the chopping block. They could be ended at any time, and that's their situation, and that's where the analogy comes in. Nambu, he was riding on Joe's back. Joe was this extreme boxer, this man going across the finish line, someone that was surprising and shocking everybody every time they witnessed what he was doing in his matches. And as time went on, the Scorpion started to notice that Joe really did have a chance at making it to the end, becoming the champion. And Sachio believed so as well. And eventually, in the middle of this, obviously, the Scorpion struck Joe. Nambu, he did something that truly would make Joe upset. He bet on the fact, or bluffed, that if Joe did make it into the tournament, into the top 4, he would throw the first match, and it would bring in a lot of money. And that's what, the Mafia head honcho wanted in the first place. And Nambu, he said this to save his own life, but also to save Joe's. And in a lot of ways, he didn't believe in Joe in that time. He had no faith in him whatsoever. He just said that just to be able to get out of the situation at that time. So, when the strike finally came around, when he finally was struck, and it became very obvious that Joe got, hit by the Scorpion, he was like, it's just my nature, it's just how I am. And he's basically saying, I'm an impulsive person. I do things on impulse. I was scared, and I just did what I did, and I said what I said just to be able to save my life and save your life at the time. He didn't really put too much thought into it. He just did what came naturally to him. And so even though it is a problem, like it's in a way he betrayed Joe, he didn't try to hurt Joe. He didn't want to purposely hurt Joe. And you can see that he reflects on this throughout the episode. He doesn't try to apologize, which I do respect that about the character. You could see throughout the episode, he does feel guilty. You could definitely see by the way he just betrays himself. I mean, the way he goes to the bar, he gets drunk, and then he falls over and all that in the middle of dead night. He looks at Team Nowhere's sign, and then eventually gets to Sachio, and I mean, him just giving Sachio a blade and all this, like, here, make your decision. Just like the man, you could see he wasn't trying to apologize. He was just making everything very clear on who he was, and I am thankful for his character for being like that. I don't like it to when characters try to blame everybody but themselves. You could see that he was taking it in stride and realized that he truly was at fault in that moment, and there's just nothing else he could really say about it. And he just needs to understand that he has to make up for it and try to prove to Joe and everybody else that he is a changed man, or he's trying to change as, a human being. But okay, so let's get into the next part about the conflict. So, regardless of whatever Joe decides, if he decides to go into the match and fight, we know Joe. Joe is not going to back down. He is definitely going to fight, okay? He is not going to throw a match. After looking at Joe's character, he is definitely someone that's willing to throw his life away for the ring. It's common sense if you've just been paying attention to his character since the very beginning. And so Joe could potentially die, which that has been an ongoing background theme for a while for a Megalo box. But the more I look at this episode, the more I'm starting to realize that maybe Nambu is the one that's going to take the weight on his back, and which should be very symbolic in a way, because once again, Nambu was kind of riding on Joe's shoulders, his back, this entire journey. And so it would be symbolic if Nambu took the pain or the weight off of Joe, for he would take all the pressure and then he would be the one to die instead of Joe. That would be very interesting. I'd feel bad for Nambu, but it'd be a great way for his character to be sent off to kind of tie in, helping out the frog instead of the Scorpion just always taking, and striking at the frog. I think that'd be very cool. But I don't know. That's just the impression I got after seeing the way the episode was displayed. I mean, Joe could still die, Nambu can still die, they both could, die, but I feel like Nambu is going to make a decision where he's going to sacrifice himself for Joe and Sachio don't die, because like I've said already in my series review of Megalo Box, Nambu cares about Joe, even though Joe states like, you don't care about me and all that, and I mean, he got really upset with Nambu in this episode. Deep down, we know as the audience that Nambu does care about Joe. I mean, like I said, his reaction in this episode speaks a lot of volume about his character. It gives depth to him, letting us know that he is someone that does feel bad, and he just is in a spot right now. He doesn't really know what to do. But okay, anyways, let's get into a nice little fighting segment for this episode. So we had a dude called Pepe that was in this episode, and my God, that dude got knocked the hell out. Like, it was not even a fight. I mean, I don't personally watch boxing, wrestling, and stuff like that, but I know 2-round match, 2 minutes and 10 seconds in, that's a pretty short freaking match, okay? I know for a fact that's a pretty short boxing matches, because I know boxing matches, they can last for a good long while. They can get pretty brutal and stuff from what I have seen, like little clips and stuff. So, just seeing how the match ended in 2 minutes and 10 seconds in the second round, that's kind of scary. It shows what level Yuri is at, but at the same time, it's a little bit disappointing. I'm not gonna lie. Let me explain why. The reason why it's a little bit disappointing, I'm not putting the episode down, it's just disappointing because Pepe is like a top-tier fighter. He's a guy that's like near the end game of a boxer. He's near the top. So he should have put up, I felt like he should put up more of a fight, but he didn't, which I think what this really does come down to, I don't think it's because of, Yuri just being that overwhelmingly powerful. That could be what they were going for, but I believe what it really does come down to is probably time constraints, since this does have only a few episodes left. There's not much time to really dive into side characters like Pepe, so they probably just wanted to get it quickly out of the way before they can get to the main conflict, the main fight for the story, and I think that's what it really, came down to because of this episode. But yeah, I'm just a little bit disappointed that Pepe was knocked out so quickly, because he really had a great design. I mean, holy crap, the intro to when he popped up in the episode, and you saw the animation of him moving in the screen and stuff, I'm like, that's an epic looking intro, the way he looked and everything, but then he went down like that in like one hit, and I'm like, well, that's disappointing. But it does show once again how crazy Yuri is, which, let's get into Yuri. So, we already knew that the whole purpose of Yuri being in this tournament for Shirato is that he is displaying the integrated gear. For instance, putting it on display, advertising it for people who want to buy it, and then it'll make sales of Shirato go up. It's just a big advertisement for, the gear that they are making. And we get a little bit of a clarification to who this gear is actually being made for. In the audience that was watching this fight between Pepe and Yuri, we see a military man, someone that's a part of the military watching this fight, which makes sense because you would assume the military would have some interest in some integrated gear. If it can enhance your body, make you move faster, hit stronger and all that, or hit with a lot harder force, I mean, obviously the military would be interested. So, Shirato is not just developing gear just to be able to participate in boxing matches. They're developing it to make a military equivalent to be able to use on the field, which is pretty interesting. I like the expansion of the world, because we are aware that there is wars in this verse. Because, I mean, think about the character a while back, a few episodes ago, that lost his legs and he was at the end of the road and all that. So, this has already been established. So, most likely, this military commander is someone that, was in that war, and they're trying to figure out a way to just, move past stuff like that, or have stronger, forces or men for they can fight against anybody that comes at them. So, yeah, I like that little detail. I know many might not care about it, but it's the little things that make me appreciate a story. So, we finally get clarification to Sachio and what happened to him in the past, and what he's been doing in this series, or what his purpose was. So, just like how Nambu was technically riding Joe and all that, he was on his back being carried, Sachio was also doing that. He jumped on board, jumped on the Joe ship, just to be able to get his revenge against the Shirato company. For instance, what Yuki is working for, and who Yuri is working underneath. He joined Joe because he wanted Joe to beat them, to prove and shove it in their face that their gear is not that good. Because the gear that Yuri has and is using is apparently the gear that Sachio's father made, and eventually was stolen. The actual way to make it was stolen. Shirato grabbed it, and then they got rid of the evidence, or like as much evidence as they could, that they stole it, and, basically Sachio's family suffered and died because of Shirato. And, Yuki found out about this, like, anyone that was a part of this, let's get rid of them as quickly as possible. So it does show that she's trying to weed out the bad apples that were a part of the company that did such despicable things. I mean, it does make sense why she wouldn't want that attached to the company, because, I mean, she's trying to, advertise a gear and sell it to the military. And so if it's found out that they, got this gear technology through illegal means, then it's not gonna be good for, them, especially if the media gets a hold of that. So yeah, Sachio is definitely someone that could easily hurt the reputation of the company, and I feel like that's one of the big reasons why probably Yuki decided to take it upon herself and watch over Sachio and give him a home to stay at for the time being. I do think she's a good person deep down, but I believe one of the big reasons is probably because she wanted to protect the reputation of her company and advertise and sell her gear. But that's about it when it comes to this week's episode of Megalo Box. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Did you enjoy this week's episode? Did you hate this week's episode? Please be honest in the comments below. And how do you feel about that final line from the dude in the store where he says, "Who should I be betting on this time?" Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I love you guys. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.